And we are starting now. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first virtual Board of Selectmen meeting. We hope it goes well. We'll try to iron out as many kinks as we can beforehand. Let's start out with some of the legal stuff. So in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. It's also being recorded as a Zoom meeting. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. And all town facilities are currently closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will be broadcast live through local access cable, on Facebook Live, on the public access Facebook page. You can find the web address from the agenda on the town website, and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours of the meeting. The following information is also provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link below, again, from the agenda on the Town of Lunenburg Board of Selectmen agenda for tonight, and join the public meeting. I will say it just once, https://zoom.us/j/909-174-0346. Or from a telephone, you can dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID 909-174-0347 and the pound sign. If you have not registered with Zoom, you'll be asked for your name and your email address. And please note, no participation ID is needed. Just press pound when asked. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. For the purposes of this meeting, we are not having an initial public comment because we want to make sure that all this works correctly first, and we can get to the agenda of the meeting. If everything goes well, I'll open it up for public comment at the end, and those ways of raising your hand, if using the app or typing *9 on your phone, will work then. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed in the meeting and those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes taken as a result of these discussions are expected or should be expected. Because we are in a remote meeting, all of the votes will be taken as roll call votes. So that being said, I will read from a prepared script of how remotely conducted open meetings will work. As a preliminary matter, I am Tom Alonso. I'm the chair of the Board of Selectmen, and I will do a roll call to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda, not everybody attending, but all persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear from me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative and then state your name. So one at a time. I'm just going to go in the order I see them. So Mr. McQuaid.
Yes, I can hear you.
Mrs. Luck.
Yes, I can hear you.
Mrs. Adams.
Yes, I can hear you.
And Mr. Jeffries.
Yes, I can hear you as well.
Town Manager Heather Lemieux.
Yes, I can hear you.
And Town Council Adam Costa.
I can hear you as well.
Excellent. We don't have any anticipated speakers, I believe, other than the 7 of us. So ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment initially, and we will attempt at the end to do this. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by telephone and video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website and identifying how the public may join. Please note that, as I said, this is being recorded on Zoom as well as through PAC. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer or show anything in the background that you may not want people to see. Meeting ground rooms. We're turning now to the first item of the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And again, you have the ability to show the raise hand. I will be monitoring that as I try to run the meeting. So I will ask from any members of the board, in the order that I call them, if there are any questions going forward before we begin the meeting. So Mr. McQuaid, any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Mrs. Luck,
No questions.
Mrs. Adams,
No questions?
and Mr. Jeffries,
No.
Madam Town Manager,
No questions.
and Mr. Town Council, Mr. Costa.
No questions.
Okay, so I'm gonna, a lot of our business, the current business is announcements. I don't have any other announcements. Does anybody on the board have any announcements they need to make? No. Okay, so at 7:05, we have a public hearing for Smokestack Roasters LLC for a wine and malt on premises license, section 12, located at 39 Massachusetts Ave. The intent of this is to just open this meeting. We will not be conducting this public hearing, but we will open it as required by law and by posting. And I would entertain a motion that we move to continue this public hearing to April 14th at 7:05 p.m. Can someone make that motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor, Mr. McQuaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
and Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and an aye for me. So that public hearing has been continued to April 14th at 7:05 p.m. I would like to turn the microphone over. Katie, did you have something you wanted to say?
I raised my hand to make a motion, but
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. I tried.
Appreciate it. No, I appreciate you following that rule. I will turn the meeting over to the town manager for updates on the COVID-19 status for what's coming through the town and through the office. So, Madam Town Manager.
Thank you. So as previous updates that hopefully a lot of people have seen in the community, provide a more updated status on a number of those. So after 2 weeks of Governor Baker issuing a state of emergency, each day still brings new information that requires us to adjust how we function and operate. In the last couple of days, my focus has been to plan for immediate issues such as how to delay the upcoming special state election scheduled for March 31st, working on a solution for remote participation for our public meetings, conference calls with state agencies, constant communication with staff, an onslaught of communications and updates from various agencies and my colleagues, communications with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, establishing a continuity of operations plan so that we can continue to provide services to residents and businesses throughout the duration of this pandemic, among other needs that require action in response to COVID-19 pandemic. There's a constant flow of new information, including federal and state mandates that directly impact our community, businesses, and employees that requires outreach and a planned response. I want to thank all the department heads and staff for their level of commitment to maintain operations and offer a helping hand when needed, especially our first responders, police and fire chiefs, Jim Gareffi of the Board of Health, the school superintendent, and especially our IT staff. Hence today, we couldn't have this meeting without them. We continue to ask for everyone's patience and understanding during this time, as we are committed to continuing to provide services to our residents and businesses at the same time as helping our residents and staff stay safe. So here are a number of updates specific to Lunenburg. There also will be posted on the website, town Facebook page, the townwide listserv, sent to the ledger, and to public access. On Tuesday, March 17th, I created a page on our town website that includes all the public service announcements and other important documents and links to information related to COVID-19. This includes Board of Health updates and the link to Lunenburg Public Schools with all informational releases from the school. Closure of town facilities, schools, towns, school playgrounds, and school fields. Beginning on March 16th, all town facilities were closed to the public, and this is currently in effect until April 7th, which also coincides with the school closing date as of today. Also beginning on March 17th, all public, including school playgrounds in Lunenburg, are closed to the public until April 7th. This includes Wallace Park, Kids Kingdom, Marshall Park, and school playgrounds. All school fields are also closed to the public. The police department has been asked to monitor these areas during their patrols to enforce closure. Communications with town departments. As of Monday, March 23rd, all staff at town facilities are able to work remotely will do so, and any staff that cannot work remotely will work on a rotating schedule, so not to work with other members of their department or in close proximity to others. Phone lines will be monitored and all emails to staff will be returned. Please contact us if you have questions. We are here to help if possible. If you need to contact a particular department, please visit the town's website at www.lunenburgma.gov. And each individual department's webpage includes contact information, including phone number and email addresses. Board and committee and commission meetings. The IT director, the public access manager, and I performed a live test on Zoom on Thursday. Initially, there were issues with audio on broadcasting live on the public access channel, but these were worked out. Instructions on how to view meetings and log in to participate are printed on posted agendas. I'm working with the appropriate officials that post meetings on instructions on how to conduct meetings and on information that needs to be posted on the agenda to notify residents on alternative means of public access. We ask that the boards and committees only meet to conduct essential business and delay meetings if possible to a future date. Senior Center updates. As with other town facilities, the Eagle House will be closed to the public until April 7th, and this includes all activities at the Senior Center and off-site. Effective Friday, March 21st, the Eagle House staff will be working remotely, but will still be performing outreach, delivery of Meals on Wheels, and other vital services to our seniors. The Council on Aging Director has begun virtual museum, aquarium, games, fitness programs, all appropriate for seniors on the Eagle House Facebook page, along with COVID-19 scam information forwarded from the state. Van transportation service has been canceled until further notice, and all clients have been notified. The Meals on Wheels program was extended to all Lunenburg residents aged 60 or older who are self-isolating in their homes, and an additional 4 seniors were added. A new meal delivery service has been identified as well by the Council on Aging Director called Heart to Home Meals for Seniors, and this is for age seniors 60 and older. Their contact information is hearttohomemeals.com, or you can call 508-658-3000. As of March 18th, volunteers are no longer being used to deliver meals, and meals will now be delivered by our Council on Aging Director and 2 other staff members. Deliveries have also been shifted to every other day so that deliveries will be made on Monday and Wednesday only, with meals for multiple days. Clients are asked to put a cooler out on their porch or outside their door in order to maintain social distancing. For any questions, please contact the Council on Aging Director, Sue Doherty, at 978-582-4166, or S. Doherty, DOHERTY, at lunenburgonline.com. Curbside trash and recycling. Casella is still on their normal schedule of picking up trash and recycling. Information on town meeting and town elections. The state passed special legislation yesterday to delay the special state election that was scheduled on March 31st, and it's rescheduled now for June 2nd. This was House Bill 4582, and passed special legislation allowing the delay of municipal elections. That's Senate Bill 2608. If the state had not passed special legislation to delay the special state election, our only other recourse was to file a court order, which we were prepared to do, given that 25 out of our 30 election workers are over the age of 65, and our polling location is a town facility that is closed to the public until April 7th. This facility also houses central office staff for the school, which is essential to the continuation of educational services. Since the warrant had not been posted for the annual town meeting, the Board of Selectmen may postpone the annual town meeting to a date prior to June 30th under the current Mass General Law. I have a proposal before the board to reschedule the annual town meeting until June 13th, and I've reached out to the town clerk to find out her preference for a date for the annual town election. The town clerk has a meeting with the registrars, and they are possibly looking at combining it with the special state election on June 2nd. And she will notify me once they make a recommendation. The governor filed Bill H4572 on March 16th, and the hearing on this bill was scheduled for March 19th. This bill will provide flexible solutions for communities caused by COVID-19, including options to address postponing town meetings 30 days due to the public health emergency, allow for delays to extend the date of annual town meetings beyond June 30th, and reduce quorum requirements. The governor filed another bill today, March 24th, House Bill 4974, called an act to further address challenges faced by municipalities and school districts resulting from COVID-19. This legislation is designed to provide flexible solutions of local officials across the Commonwealth as the challenges of COVID-19 epidemic disrupt the normal process of administering local government. The town caucus date is to be rescheduled per the new special legislation allowing delaying town elections. And anyone wishing to take out nominations for the annual town election should contact the town clerk's office at 978-582-4130, extension 130 or 131. The town clerk will coordinate the receipt and drop off of papers. The deadline to submit papers is Monday, March 30th by 5 p.m. and this must be mailed to the town clerk at P.O. Box 135, Lunenburg, Mass. 00462. And as long as it's postmarked by March 30th, she will receive them. And this, just to make a note on that as well, that was one piece, the nomination papers, that was not addressed in the special legislation. So that's why the date remains the same. Tax payments should only be mailed to the town's lockbox at the following address: Town of Lunenburg, Department 1260, P.O. Box 986500, Boston, Mass. 02298-6500. Motor vehicle taxes were due on March 23rd. but there will be a 30-day grace period resulting in no interest and penalties during this grace period. For any questions, please contact the Treasurer Collector, Mylene Malari, at 978-582-4130, extension 135, or M. Malari, MALLARI, at lunenburgonline.com. The Devens Regional Household Hazardous Collection Center has postponed their April collection and their next collection date will be May 6th and May 9th, 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. And anyone wishing to follow that can look on their website at www.devenshhw.com for the most updated information. An update from Unitil. Unitil's focus in the last days and weeks has been to ensure essential services remain uninterrupted, and some of these essential services have been suspended. Non-essential services have been suspended. Collection activities and disconnections. They have temporarily suspended all non-payment service disconnections and collection activities. If you're having trouble paying your bill, know that their customer service team is there to help you find a solution to work out in this difficult time. Non-essential planned electric outages. Unless the work is needed to prevent future disruptions, any planned service interruptions related to the maintenance work on the system has been suspended. They are aware that many individuals are working from home and children are home from school, and they want to accommodate your needs. Energy efficiency on-premise services. They are temporarily suspending all energy efficiency service activities that require home or business visits, such as energy audits. They believe these programs have great value for their customers, and they continue to explore alternatives where possible. Continuing services, electricity and gas service. The pandemic task force is working diligently to find creative means of ensuring their core services remain uninterrupted, ensuring they continue to meet your energy needs in this difficult time. Customer requested service. Their tech service still responding to service requests as needed for their customers, including turn-offs, turn-ons, and relocation services. The customer service team is now working entirely remotely and is still taking calls and service requests. Regular billing and ability to make payments. They continue to offer their full suite of payment and billing options for customers and is standing by to provide assistance through payment plans and other options. And they encourage customers to take advantage of My Unitil to manage their accounts online. Emergency response. Their priority, as always, remains public safety, and they wish for you to contact them immediately for all gas and electricity related emergencies, and they will respond. Update from Verizon. Verizon is taking the following steps to protect customers during COVID-19 and protect customers against the hardships they're currently facing. They're waiving overage charges and late fees to support customers who may be financially affected by the COVID-19 crisis. They're adding 15 gigabytes of high-speed data for wireless consumer and small business customers to be automatically applied with no customer action necessary. They're providing a new discount internet option for low-income households, and they're waiving 2 months of internet and voice service charges for current Lifeline customers. These actions were built upon previous pledges to not terminate service and to prioritize first responders so they can continue to respond to the needs of the communities. Their goal is to ensure their customers have the tools they need to stay connected. And on my online report, you'll find all these related email addresses and web addresses for more information. Update on Walmart and Hannaford hours. On March 19th, the manager from Walmart contacted me to tell me the hours were changed from 7 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. Monday through Sunday. Pharmacy hours are 9 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 10 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. on Sunday. The Vision Care Center will not be handling any retail sales, only repairs at this point. Hannaford is shortening their daily hours to provide time for additional cleaning and restocking the shelves. Effective Saturday, the Lunenburg Hannaford hours were changed from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. Monday through Sunday. The pharmacy hours remain unchanged, and there will be a dedicated time when customers over the age of 60 or individuals identified by the CDC as high risk may shop during special hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 6 a.m. till 7 a.m. Updates from the police department can be found on the police department webpage on our town website. That will be updated by the police department and the school as well. The school superintendent has sent out a number of updates over the last 2 weeks regarding school closures, continuity of education, food insecurity program, and other responses related to COVID-19. And they will all be found at www.lunenburgschools.net and pushed out through school messenger and automated calls. There's a number of updates from the state. I will just highlight a few of them and make sure this is available through our website and other locations. There's a lot of information being pushed out by the state as well, as you can imagine. Just an update on the number of COVID-19 cases in Massachusetts as of March 23rd, according to the MEMA situation reports that are being sent out daily. As of March 23rd, there are 777 COVID-19 cases and 9 deaths. We received confirmation today of our second confirmed positive case in Lunenburg. And when I spoke with Jim Gareffi of Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, he did say that we can continue to see additional cases due to the increase in number of testing that's becoming available. The state report from MEMA also indicates the number of patients have been tested. So 8,922 patients have been tested to date by the Mass State Public Health Laboratory and hospitals and commercial laboratories. In regards to another update that issued by the governor on March 23rd, he further amended the emergency order limiting gatherings to 10 individuals and prohibiting on-premise consumption of food or drink at bars and restaurants beginning Tuesday, March 17th, effective till the April 6th. And food service establishments may have more than 10 employees on premise to provide takeout and delivery services, provided they follow social distancing protocols. At this point, I will turn it over back to the chair.
Thank you, Heather. So you've stated a few of these things. I assume all of that was under topic 1? Or did you address some of the other ones as well?
Under current business,
Yes.
that was just topic 1. Yes.
Okay. So discussion on the declaration of a local state of emergency.
Yes. In your Google Drive, you should have a copy or draft of a local state of emergency, and as well as a list of a number of communities that have declared a local state of emergency. And this is more of a belt and suspenders approach to the current situation, and hopefully ensure funding in the long run from FEMA when that information has come out. We have received along the way guidance from MEMA on tracking expenses, which I have forwarded on to all the departments, and they are tracking related expenses.
Phyllis, you have a question.
Yes, in the town manager's report, I thought she said that the town clerk was considering a June 2nd vote for the town voting. Was that true? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Well, if the town meeting is June 13th, doesn't the voting have to happen after town meeting?
I do not believe so in this case because of the special legislation, but that might be a good question to defer to Attorney Costa.
Attorney Costa, you're muted, by the way. You can unmute.
I'm unmuted. Okay. So that's correct, Heather. So there's, because of the special legislation that authorizes the postponement of town elections, there's no requirement that the election occur before or after town meeting. So you're free to hold it any date you see fit prior to June 30th.
But aren't there some things that have to pass town meeting and the election?
Not unless there was a ballot vote that was, but there,
Well,
right.
there is the item of the CPA that would require a ballot vote if that was to go forward.
And Mr. Chairman, through you, so I can review the CPA, but I will tell you that with respect to most statutes that authorize or require both a town meeting vote and a vote of the populace at an election, the sequencing typically doesn't matter. We've addressed this recently in contexts like, for example, marijuana. Some communities have opted to do one before the other, or vice versa, and it doesn't matter in most cases with most legislation. I can review the CPA and I can confirm with Heather that that's the case.
Okay.
Thank you. I had one more question. It sounded like the town manager said caucus would be rescheduled, but I was assuming it's canceled.
It can be rescheduled per the new special legislation that just passed yesterday. That's it within the in the text of the legislation.
Right. Before that passed, Phyllis, we didn't have any authority. There was no way for the town to reschedule it. Now, with the special legislation that just passed yesterday, we do have the ability to reschedule the caucus.
So will that be an agenda item next week or something?
Most likely, once we hear back from the town clerk on what their recommended date is for the annual town election.
Right. So on this local state of emergency, are we looking to pass this tonight?
Yes, and how it's worded, it's retroactive to the date the governor declared a state of emergency.
So let me ask the members, has everybody read this declaration of emergency file?
Yes.
Damon?
Yeah, I read it, and I guess the only clarification I was looking for is what the benefit was. And I guess Heather just explained its potential funding down the road. Was there any other benefit besides that?
It does allow the town to respond as far as expenditures and transfer within the budget. So say our emergency management expenditure line, which is I think approximately $1,000, went over that, it's an allowable for a state of emergency. And I would ask through the chair if Attorney Costa can expand on that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So a number of communities throughout Massachusetts have decided to declare local states of emergency. It's questionable where the authority lies for that. There is an act of 1950, the Civil Defense Act, that was adopted. It's where the governor looks to gain his authority to declare a state of emergency statewide. That act primarily addresses state government and provides the governor with a variety of additional authority that he wouldn't otherwise have in a state of emergency. everything from commandeering supplies and facilities to seeking eligibility for federal funding. There are a couple of provisions within that Civil Defense Act that relate to local government. They don't say explicitly that local governments can declare a quote unquote state of emergency. But a number of communities have opted to do so, both in reliance upon the Civil Defense Act, but also in reliance upon just general principles of municipal governance and the authority that the chief executive officials, the Board of Selectmen, together with the Board of Health, have in most communities to act in the general public health, safety, and welfare. So the benefits are, as Heather has already alluded to, that from a messaging perspective, it sends a message to the community that these are difficult times and that the municipality is undertaking stringent measures to, again, protect the health, safety, and welfare of its inhabitants. Additionally, there has been some suggestion, at least in the municipal law community, that it might ease the ability of municipalities to qualify for federal funding. One town issued a press release together with its state of emergency declaration about a week and a half ago. And I like the careful wording of the press release. It indicated that that town, through the conducting of its due diligence, had considered advice and recommendations from state and local officials across the country who were experienced in seeking FEMA aid specifically. And they determined that there was a general consensus that by declaring a local state of emergency when the facts warranted it, that it would increase the likelihood, not necessarily of qualifying for funding, but certainly of obtaining a quicker review and approval of aid applications. So the funding availability, the messaging aspects of it, and any after the fact justifications, municipalities are taking extreme actions over the course of the past couple of weeks, as they should, to deal with situations that are unprecedented, and in many cases where there aren't statutes or regulations that are on point. So the ability after the fact to justify, if you're challenged, why a certain action was taken by citing the declaration of a local state of emergency could be helpful. So we haven't told our towns that they need to or that it's obligatory or mandatory. We haven't strongly encouraged them to do so, but where our municipalities have exhibited an interest in doing so, we've certainly supported it for all the reasons that I just described.
Okay. Katie, you have a question. Unmute first.
Okay. All right. My question was primarily for Heather in regards to this potentially helping with expenditures. Do we currently have any associated with this? Any specific?
You're muted.
Do we have any expenditures so far?
Yeah, like specific to this outside of the norm.
Yes, I would say supplies for certain IT type equipment. I don't have a tally that like I indicated, I have forwarded on the tracking guidance for all the departments and what types of expenditures they need to track. Another qualifier would be at the beginning of this process, we were using our volunteers for Meals on Wheels deliveries, and those volunteer hours and people, those would qualify as reimbursable expenses.
Mr. Jeffries, you have a question.
Yes, this question is for town manager and for Attorney Costa. In addition, we heard all the positives for the declaration of a state of emergency. What are the negatives? What additional authorities are granted to either the board or the town manager that may cause some pause amongst our community?
I don't know of any negatives. Maybe Attorney Costa can expand on that. I think it also, like Attorney Costa said, it's symbolic in many respects. And from my perspective, priority-wise, to eventually to ensure us that we're able to request reimbursement, and maybe this would streamline the process faster. I think to me, that's a high priority. And when I spoke to our emergency management director, Fire Chief Sullivan, and he provided me the contact for our regional coordinator, and she also had forwarded on a sample one. So it's something that MEMA provides the community as well. So, and he would be, once this is signed, he would be notifying her. So to me, that signifies that it will help in the long run.
Attorney Costa, anything to add to that?
So briefly, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, and one thing that I think I've learned, and some of my colleagues have learned, is really how much we as municipal attorneys don't know with regard to a pandemic like COVID-19 or the coronavirus. This is unprecedented territory in many respects. And so there has been a lot of chatter. I'm a member of a listserv, Municipal Lawyers Association listserv, and there's some routine chatter in the course of the day or week to week on various topics in municipal governance. And as you might imagine, the listserv has been nonstop, every minute, every 5 minutes, a series of emails on various topics as new legislation gets proposed and is acted upon. And so there's been a lot of discussion on some of these topics for which we don't have answers, because there's no statutory guidance, there's no regulatory guidance, and states of emergency has been one of those topics. And so what I've tried to do for our communities, and I've exchanged many an email with Heather, is I've sent our town managers and administrators some snippets from what the various attorneys in the community are saying, and even attorneys that are working in the public sector for DLS or Department of Revenue, Elections Division, on these various topics, so that the towns we represent can see the different perspectives. I've not seen anything from the perspective of a negative that might go along with a declaration of a state of emergency. I've only been asked once in my years of practice about the potential declaring of a local state of emergency. It was years ago. And in that circumstance, which wasn't anything like what we're dealing with now, the current pandemic, my only thought was, again, because of the messaging aspect, which I think is a positive thing in the current context, what message does it send? Does it cause a local panic because you've declared a local state of emergency? If it weren't a circumstance where many of the surrounding communities were doing it, where it was being done at the state level as well. I think because of how far we've come over the past couple of weeks, because we have a state of emergency in effect at the state level, because there are dozens of other communities that have already taken the step of declaring local states of emergency, I don't think it's going to cause that sort of a local panic. To your point, Michael Ray, about potentially affording municipal officials or the town manager, say, with additional authority, I can't say that it really does that. There's nothing in the state of emergency that I've seen. There's nothing that would modify the provisions of your current charter. There's nothing that would have the ability to modify the provisions of statute or state regulation. Some of that has been done by the state itself, by the House and by the Senate through their special legislation. But again, the chief component here is the messaging aspect of it, the availability of funding, and the ability to use it potentially as after the fact justification for things you may need to do on a whim in an effort to protect the public welfare. And
I would add here that we did do this 12 years ago during the ice storm. We declared, I had to sign a state of local state of emergency. And that afforded some more mobility. And again, a lot of recouping of costs that were directly attributable to the ice storm. So this is, it's different circumstances, but it has been done in Lunenburg. Mrs. Adams, you have a question.
Short question, or maybe a comment. One is that it sounded like it would be retroactive to match up with the, okay, I'm off mute, thank you. It would be retroactive to when the state declared it. In that sense, I don't know if I'd be ready to do one locally at this time, thinking that even if we visited it next week or at a future meeting, if it could still be retroactive, I don't see the advantage in doing it now in terms of what would become my opinion in regards to messaging. I am sort of at this point of the opinion that actions can either show that we're creating caution or creating more fear. And I think people are pretty nervous at this point, and layering on another thing like this, I'd rather put off the local one until we had a better understanding of to me, what our actual local emergency was. I mean, I think the state level emergency and all of their efforts really are covering our needs at this point.
Yeah, so if I may just respond just quickly to that, I think that as what the town manager said, and also what our town council said, I think the major thrust of doing it is an attempt to start taking steps and tagging expenses that may be due to an existing state of emergency at the state or federal level already, that are making us do certain things that we wouldn't normally have done. So it's not really just to cause a fear or panic. I mean, I think if anybody puts on the TV, they get enough of that already. I think it's more of a legal maneuver here to establish that we are being asked to do things that we may not have otherwise done. And also to Mr. Costa's point, there's no negative side of doing this. Like I said, I hear what you're saying, that we don't want to raise the bar anymore or the anxiety level, but I don't think this, especially with the explanation we've heard, does that. I think it really just, we're doing it for tactical reasons more than anything, from my standpoint. Mr. Jeffries.
Okay. With that, I think that answers all my questions. To make this motion to declare the state of emergency, do we need to read it as it's presented to us? What kind of motion would be appropriate?
Can we say read as written, or do you need me to read this, Heather? I mean, Damon has a question, so before we entertain a motion, I want to get to Damon's question too, but let's answer this one first. In order to make a motion on this, do I need to read this in its entirety? Either to Heather or to Adam?
Would you like me to respond, Heather?
Sure.
Okay.
So there's typically no requirement that you read the entirety of a document into the record before a motion is made. This is obviously a unique circumstance because we're conducting this meeting through technological means. There is still no requirement, even in the governor's order, that occur. This is not a public hearing where the public would have an opportunity to debate it, and they wouldn't have the ability to do that if you don't read it. So I defer to your discretion, Mr. Chairman, as to whether you think it's appropriate or not. Certainly, I would recommend that if you don't read it, and you'd be required to do this anyway, you make it a part of the meeting minutes and part of the record, so that somebody who is interested, who might be listening in or watching tonight, has the ability to read it after the fact.
Thank you. Damon, you have a question?
Well, not so much a question, but I just wanted to comment. Yeah, my concerns or questions really were just are to address any concerns of the public. Are we granting any authority to the town manager or to the board of selectmen that they wouldn't normally have? And I think that question has been answered. I don't feel that voting for this or enacting this is in any effort to create panic in town or say we're in a different state than we were 5 minutes ago before we voted on it. But from the explanation of Heather and Attorney Costa, it sounds like it could be beneficial to the town down the line to do so.
Well, I will, you know what, in erring on the side of caution, I will read this. I will try to read it quickly so everybody can hear it. So this is a Town of Lunenburg declaration of emergency. After I read it, somebody can decide they want to make a motion or not. Whereas a sudden, generally unexpected occurrence of circumstances demanding public action has arisen or is about to arise within the Town of Lunenburg due to the pandemic spread of the novel coronavirus known as SARS-CoV-2 and persons suffering from the effects of the resulting illness caused by the virus known as COVID-19. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic is a highly contagious and potentially fatal respiratory disease, the prevalence of which is increasing rapidly throughout the world, inclusive of the United States and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And whereas on March 10th, 2020, the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts issued a declaration of a state of emergency to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization designated COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic health emergency. And whereas on March 13th, 2020, the President of the United States announced a national declaration of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas on March 15th, 2020, Governor Baker announced emergency actions to respond to the evolving COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting public health emergency impacting the Commonwealth, including prohibitions on public gatherings of 25 or more people and prohibiting on-premises consumption of food or drink at bars and restaurants from March 17th, 2020 until April 6th, 2020, as well as suspension of elementary and secondary school education operations from March 17th, 2020 until April 6th, 2020. And whereas Governor Baker's March 15th order is applicable to all public meetings except those of state and municipal legislative bodies. And whereas the Board of Selectmen of the town of Lunenburg, Massachusetts, in consultation and with the concurrence of the Emergency Management Director, Patrick Sullivan, and other department heads, has determined that the COVID-19 pandemic poses a clear and present danger to public health, safety, and the general welfare of the people of Lunenburg or their property, so that it has become necessary for the town manager, Board of Health, and Emergency Management Director, and others to utilize and coordinate services, equipment, supplies, and facilities of existing departments, offices, and agencies or the community, both locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally, if necessary, including the taking or ordinary and or extraordinary actions for the purposes of emergency management and emergency functions to protect the public. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a public health emergency with serious public safety impacts, and a declaration of emergency is needed to prevent, minimize, or mitigate damage to public health, safety, or general welfare of the people of Lunenburg and or property which may otherwise result from the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the people of the community of Lunenburg should be able to depend upon guidance from the Board of Selectmen, department heads, and its other elected and appointed officials to take all necessary and reasonable actions to respond to and corral the spread of COVID-19 pandemic in Lunenburg. And whereas declaration of a local state of emergency will enable a town to move more promptly to more promptly access and fully secure all state and federal funding that may be available now or in the future to help pay for the cost of Lunenburg's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, including, without limitation, funding and reimbursement that may be available from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA. And whereas the declaration of a local state of emergency will provide the town manager, department heads, and public health and safety personnel with a further resource to help the town manage and respond to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in Lunenburg, and support the issuance of further orders to effectuate this declaration of emergency and otherwise to preserve public health, safety, and welfare as the COVID-19 pandemic evolves. Now, therefore, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Lunenburg, Massachusetts hereby declares that effective as of March 10th, 2020, the date of Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a state of emergency is hereby declared to exist by the Board of Selectmen in Lunenburg and hereby authorizes, under their discretion and the direction of the Board of Health and Emergency Management, all town personnel and agents to take all those actions necessary and appropriate to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, and hereby ratifies, confirms, and adopts any related action taken prior to the formal adoption of this declaration. This declaration of emergency shall remain in effect until notice is given pursuant to the Board of Selectmen's judgment that this state of emergency no longer exists. And it would be signed as approved today. So that is the document in full that we are discussing. Mr. Jeffries.
I move to declare a state of emergency within the town of Lunenburg.
Second.
Mrs. Adams. Hold on. Let me unmute you. Okay, got it.
Thank you. I had a question on what was read, the portion that said support the issuance of further orders. What would be an order that having this would support the issuance of further orders? I want to better understand what that means. It was towards the end.
Okay, I'm just looking for the,
It's the last whereas.
oh, okay. So Adam, I'm going to ask your opinion. I will read that section. It says, whereas declaration of a local state of emergency will provide the town manager, department heads, and public health and safety personnel with a further resource to help the town manage and respond to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in Lunenburg and support the issuance of further orders to effectuate this declaration of emergency and otherwise to preserve public health, safety, and welfare as the COVID-19 pandemic evolves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my sense is that I spoke before about sort of after the fact justification that are for actions that are taken. That's why we can say something in the declaration like that it's retroactive to the date of the governor's declaration of a state of emergency in the Commonwealth. In that same vein, the idea is that this can be relied upon moving forward as well. So let's say the town decided or decides that out of necessity, it's going to extend the closure of municipal facilities beyond the current date of April 7th, I think it is. Or that the town is going to order locally, maybe through its Board of Health, the closure of certain businesses after that order is lifted by the governor, maybe personal service establishments, if there's a continued fear that that may result in the expansion of the virus within the community. Those sorts of actions, again, there's no explicit statutes that are on point that justify those actions. I can make an argument that 2, 3, 4, a half dozen statutes might come close. The idea is that this local state of emergency declaration would further justify the taking of those actions through the appropriate orders issuing from those various authorities, typically Selectmen, Board of Health, and Town Manager when it comes to a public health crisis like this one.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. I think we're ready to vote. So again, roll call, Mr. McQuaid.
Aye.
Mrs. Luck.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mrs. Adams. Hold on. I got it.
I'm going to abstain just by the sense that I would have wanted to give this a little bit more time. I don't feel ready for it.
So what is your vote?
I'm abstaining from the vote.
Abstain, okay. And it's an aye from me. So four for it, 0 against, 1 abstention. So it passes. Okay. Discussion of the issuance of a court order to delay the special state election. I think that's not an actionable item, correct? Because the state has acted.
Correct.
Okay, so we will be, when will we take that up as an actual item? Will that be next week?
No, so the special state election is scheduled for June
I'm
2nd.
sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Special state election, yes. The next one is the one, okay. Yes, the special state election was, what was the date of it?
June 2nd.
June 2nd, okay. And I did see that both candidates in the 37th Middlesex district are aware of that. So not that they wouldn't be, but I saw officially that they were aware of it.
Okay.
Okay, item number 4, discussion on postponement of the annual town meeting and annual town election.
All right, but in your packet for tonight was a proposed schedule for town meeting with a date of June 13th. And I sent that out in advance to the board as well as the chair of the finance committee and the town moderator and the town clerk.
Is that the budget calendar revised? Is that the document?
Yes.
Okay.
And also to town council.
Okay. So basically working backwards, this is the culmination of the annual town meeting would be, as you said, June 13th, 2020. And that everything works backward from there. Now, everything we've done thus far, there's nothing we have to redo, right? Because we didn't actually print the warrant to the townspeople or anything, correct?
Correct. So we were approaching that date. The public hearing for finance was originally scheduled for this Thursday.
Okay.
That was canceled. We'll re-advertise according to the calendar, the appropriate number of days for the rescheduled public hearing date, and have a new date that we need to sign the town meeting warrant and town meeting election.
Okay. Mr. McQuaid, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just curious to what the thought for the date of the town election would be, whether your goal was to have it before or after town meeting, just because at some point we're going to vote on a recommendation of all the warrant articles, and if two of the selectmen change over before the meeting, you're going to have recommendations from a board that's not present at the meeting.
And that would be my point as well. I was going to bring that up, so thank you. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. I just learned today that the town clerk preferred, or they were looking at a date of June 2nd for the annual town election. So that was after I looked at the June 13th date, and the June 13th date was based on trying to have it as late as possible in June, given we don't know what is ahead of us as far as when the state of emergency will be lifted and prohibition of gatherings. But it would also allow it to be continued from June 13th prior to June 30th.
The question I have is it, I mean, in your conversations with the town clerk, is it just coincidental, or is it just she's trying to piggyback on top of the special state election to have our election at the same time? Because you're saying June 2nd, right?
June 2nd was the date they were looking at, and I'm sure it's for resources to try to do it all in one day.
Right, okay.
I didn't have that confirmation from her, but that would be my assumption.
One of the reasons, as a member of the charter committee, when this got moved, when the elections used to happen before town meeting, why they got moved to the end is exactly the point that Mr. McQuaid brought up, which was we were hearing from people at town meeting, new members who weren't really necessarily totally versed in the articles before them, and the board had changed, so the board decisions now didn't really have any bearing on the current board or boards, whether it's, you know, Board of Selectmen or planning board or school committee or whatever. So if we can, if at all possible, again, you know, a lot of that's in the purview of the town clerk. If we can get that to be after the town meeting, it would seem to make a little more sense for that reason, at least. Do you need a vote? Are you looking for a vote on this new timeline tonight, or can this wait till next week?
I was looking for a vote for tonight, just so for planning purposes, because we're going to start having our finance committee meetings again, and we need to have, and I'll get into that a little more as far as the budget, but there's a lot to do between now and town meeting, given the current financial situation.
Okay, well, personally, I have no problem with it, but I'll leave it open to the board. I don't know. Katie, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to know if it says anywhere when the term ends for somebody whose term is expiring at the election, or is it just going to stretch to whenever it is in terms of like Phyllis and Damon, in terms of the charter? I can't remember.
According to the special legislation that was just passed, those in office will remain in office until such time as another election is had.
Okay, good. So for everybody who's in an elected position, it'll just
They'll just
fill
continue.
in the
yes.
gap, so to speak. So you all get to stay.
So, and that is correct, right? Heather and Adam, that is correct, right? The way I've read it.
And is everybody planning to stay, Phyllis and Damon?
Absolutely.
I've got nowhere else to go.
Okay.
That's right.
True.
Yeah, exactly. We're all staying home.
Sad.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will, if nobody has any objection, I'll entertain a motion from someone that we approve this timeline, revised timeline of the budget calendar, concluding with the annual town meeting held on Saturday, June 13th, 2020. Mr. Jeffries.
I would encourage us to wait another week until we get a recommendation from the town clerk.
Well, we're not approving the town election. This is just town meeting. So I think that's a separate conversation. It's kind of related, but it's separate.
Yeah, it seems though, based on what we've just discussed, that if the town clerk is looking to have the elections on the 2nd and we have a meeting on the 13th, that it may make more sense for one of these dates to move.
Well, I'll let the town manager speak to that, but I have a funny feeling moving town meeting up further to before the town election is going to be problematic because of timing.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it would be problematic. We're essentially going to have to start the whole budget from scratch, and including forecasting for next year. So there's a lot of work to be done on that, and to meet just even this time schedule is going to be challenging.
Phyllis. Hold on, Phyllis. Go ahead.
Am I on now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
I'm unavailable on June 13th at this point, so I couldn't attend town meeting if it was on the 13th.
We have till the 30th. Heather, is there a possibility of, again, I don't want to throw a wrench in this, but because it's hard to put together with all the moving parts, is the 20th out?
Okay, the 20th.
The 20th, the pushing town meeting one more week back.
June. I believe the town moderator was gone the following weekend.
Gotcha. Yeah, so eventually we're gonna have, I mean, it's the beginning of the summer. I think wherever we put it, we're gonna have people who can't make it. So I did not hear anybody make a motion regarding this timeline.
I was wondering about May 30th. That way Phyllis and Damon would still be on our board if the election's June 2nd.
I missed the beginning part.
I was wondering about town meeting on May 30th in terms of hoping that Damon and Phyllis would still be on the board. Anything after June 2nd, that's the presumed date of the election, we'd have 2 new members.
Yeah, that's correct. We've noted that. I think that, again, I think there's a problem moving town meeting 2 weeks up further just because of what the town manager said and rebuilding the budget, because now this is new financial situation that she has to really recalculate and recalibrate the whole budget from the beginning. Mr. McQuaid.
I guess I'd make a motion to approve the calendar presented to us with the hope that we can schedule elections after the 13th for the town meeting.
Second.
Okay, I would, yeah. I would like to lobby the town clerk to try to have this later. I realize it's a matter of potentially saving money by having 1 election instead of 2, but I think that's a much more flexible date now, given the state legislation, to have the town election after the town meeting than trying to keep it on the state election date. So, Katie,
If we're still dealing with some of the state of emergency and hopefully some of it will clear itself up, but I think hoping to have both elections on the same day, we know one is fiscally responsible because it saves money because there's a cost to running separate elections, but also decreasing the amount of times we're pulling everybody together, I think is also mindful to everything that's going on. And so I think we should focus on hoping to have both elections on June 2nd, both for financial and for promoting, less gatherings.
well, we only have so much pull in that it's really a town clerk event. We have some, I mean, I guess we have some decision making. I don't even know. Adam and Heather, what is the methodology? Is it even spelled out? Who gets to make this decision of the election?
Yeah.
Of this town election, sorry.
Oh, I can answer partially and then I'll let Adam turn it over for the more legal perspective. But as I interpret the legislation, it's the Board of Selectmen that calls the election in consultation with the town clerk. So it's, and the chief operating officer of the town, in this case, town manager. Is that correct, Adam?
That's correct. And that presumes, if I could, Mr. Chairman, that presumes that there are no further changes through special legislation. I don't believe that there are, given the passage of the special legislation yesterday, but that's where we are as of today.
Well, I think the caveat in all of this is, of course, that things could change and they're very fluid as they are now. We don't know what it's going to be like in a month from now. So, Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where the town manager is coming from on this. I also have some budgets that I'm working on for fiscal year that starts on July the 1st. And in speaking with the town manager outside of this meeting, I understand that there needs to be some research on the financial, and I think we have a reasonable expectation that there's going to be a financial impact from this current pandemic. And there needs to be kind of a review of what happened in 2007, 8, and 9 in terms of the tax base and how that was affected. So I think the town manager definitely needs additional time. And to me, that takes, having a solid, well thought out budget for next year is, I think this would give her more time to do that. And then, we can certainly have time to consult with the town manager with the town clerk about having, seeing about the elections and trying to get that pushed back.
I would agree with that. All right, so we have a motion to go with this revised schedule that puts town meeting on June 13th. It has been seconded. I will call a roll call vote. Mr. McQuaid.
Aye.
Mrs. Luck.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mrs. Adams. Hold on a second. Where are you? There you are. Okay, Mrs. Adams.
Okay, aye.
I didn't hear your vote. I'm sorry.
Oh, aye.
Aye, and aye for me. So it is unanimous. We will adopt that, and we will talk with the town clerk and try to discuss what is the best date, and we can discuss what the pros and cons are at another time, but at least this gets that on the schedule. Okay, number 5, designation of chairman to sign warrants per Mass General Law 41, Section 52. I will leave it to you to describe this, Heather.
Yes, so this Mass General Law allows the Board of Selectmen to designate any one of its members for the purpose of approving bills and payroll. So the warrants that are normally done signed at the meetings, and then that member would make available to the board through a report about the warrants that they signed. And this would lessen the interaction of coming into town hall, especially we're due closing to town public, and hopefully we can, this would be a very temporary measure right now.
Mr. Jeffries,
I move to designate the chair with the ability to sign warrants per MGL 41, section 52.
Second.
okay, if there's no other, yes, Mrs. Adams.
Is there a time associated with it, or do we need to identify a time for, like, say, the month of April? I feel like we need to put like more specifics to it. Does that make sense?
I believe, and I'll let town manager and town council speak, but I believe that that authority is given only in such time as the governor's emergency order still remains in effect.
No, actually, but you can put in that motion to do that. So this is a mass general law that was adopted as part of the Municipal Modernization Act, and so allowed this designation, but you could put in it that it will be until town offices reopen, if that's what you wish.
Well, as chair and as one member, that's what I would want it to be. I wouldn't want it to be a standing event. I think it's important for all members to see all the warrants, and if we're doing this just to, maintain the social distancing that is part of this emergency, I'm for it in the short term, but I certainly would think we'd want it rescinded once the emergency no longer exists. Mr. Jeffries.
I'd like to amend the motion, and I'm trusting that Mr. McQuaid will amend his second as well. Amend the motion to add the language until such a time that the town is no longer in a state of emergency.
I'd amend my second.
Excellent. Okay, I think we're ready to vote on that. All those in favor of the amended motion and amended second, Mr. McQuaid.
Aye.
Mrs. Luck. You gotta unmute, Phyllis.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mrs. Adams.
Aye.
And aye from me. Item number 6, remote. Mr. Costa.
If I could, Mr. Chairman. So I tried to get my hand up before the vote was taken, but I just want to raise a point of clarity, or a point of order, I guess. The way that I heard Mr. Jeffries' motion was that authority is in effect until such time as there is no longer a state of emergency in Lunenburg. And so I don't recall, I don't have the document in front of me, whether the local state of emergency that you voted in earlier on the agenda had an end date to it. Was that only good through such time as the state lifts its state of emergency?
I'm looking at it now. It shall remain in effect until the notice is given pursuant to the Board of Selectmen's judgment that this state of emergency no longer exists. So no, that means we have to actively say there's no more state of emergency.
That's fine. I would just want to remind you then that the lifting of the state of emergency by the governor then at some point, hopefully in the near future, won't rescind that authority you just voted with respect to warrants. You will need to also lift your local state of emergency to take effect.
I appreciate that. And Heather, if we can make a note of that, that would be, so we don't forget that. Number 6, remote participation during town office closures. Unmute, please. There you go.
This was just to put on as far as procedure, and that we'd be holding our meetings remotely until further notice.
Yeah, so what we will be doing, if anybody's watching on the Zoom meeting or watching and on PAC, the other town boards, commissions, and committees that will hold meetings during this governor's emergency will be held in this fashion. So that line item is, that's how the town will participate in all town meetings or elected bodies and appointed body meetings while the town offices remain closed. As a point of departure, an aside, if people who are watching can tell us how they felt about this, could they hear everything? Was it clear? Was the picture fine? Was the audio fine? That will help us. So if there are some technical deficiencies that we need to address, it would be good to know that sooner than later. Item number 7, discussion on the Guglietti dangerous dog hearing outcome. I'll hand it over to the town manager and I'm guessing town council as well.
Yes. So in your packet for tonight's meeting was the an opinion letter from Michael Kenefick from Me, Talman and Costa about next steps. And this is in response to the favorable decision in the town's favor for the procedural matter and how the dangerous dog hearing was conducted. And I will turn it over to Attorney Costa to describe the next steps in regards to impoundment and the appeal process.
Thank you, Heather, through you, Mr. Chairman. So as the town manager has just stated, we received a favorable decision from the magistrate of the district court. These dangerous or nuisance dog hearings are challenging in as much as there are multiple steps in the process. So there is a further right of appeal. That right of appeal, as is indicated in the memo that my associate Mike Kenefick prepared for you, is to a judge of the district court. And then beyond that, there are further appeals up the chain all the way eventually to the Supreme Judicial Court if a party wants to take it that far. And so what that means, at least the short version of it, is that there are further rounds of litigation ahead if the owner of the dogs chooses to avail themselves of that right. We have not received a formal notice of appeal yet. I will tell you that Attorney Kenefick was contacted by Attorney Cohen, who represented the owner, indicating that an appeal was forthcoming. There was I think it's a 10-day appeal deadline that needed to be complied with, but right at the tail end of that deadline, I think it was maybe 7 or 8 days, maybe 9 days into it, the Supreme Judicial Court issued an order in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic that essentially froze the courts and froze all statutes of limitations, deadlines, and such that would apply to actions proceeding in court, and froze them until April 21st. So any statute of limitations, even if that statute was initially only 10 days, is extended through the 21st. So that's sort of where we stand as of today. We know that, or we anticipate there being an appeal because we've been told that there will be, but we haven't officially received it yet, and there's no requirement that it get filed until the 21st of April. If that occurs, we'll then set down the path of a further de novo hearing in district court, followed by potential further litigation, at that point mostly on the papers, in potentially 2 or 3 additional courts. And so that's where we are with respect to litigation. All the particulars are in the memo that you have a copy of. I'm happy to address any specifics of that. There are a number of other aspects to that memo and questions that were asked. I do want to stand clear as best I can of discussing any specifics with regard to litigation strategy, because we're not in executive session, we're in open session. But if there are general questions about the process ahead or other questions generally about the ongoings, what occurred already in district court, I did not prosecute the case. My associate did, but I've had conversations with him. I understand what occurred, and I'm happy to answer them as best I can.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, so, oh, okay, yeah, my only question is, the Guletti family, they have a lot of dogs because they have a kennel license, and we don't have any control over whether or not they have a kennel. That's the animal control officer. But in the event that their kennel license is not renewed this spring, and they have more dogs than are allowed with this order, what do we do at that point? What are our options, rather?
If I could, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So what I want to be careful of is that we're not confusing the actions that have already been taken. And I don't think that you are, Mr. Jeffries, but maybe for the public, that we're not confusing the actions that have already been taken under the statute, under 140, section 157, the dangerous or nuisance dog statute, and the magistrate's hearing that already occurred, and the additional potential litigation that I already discussed with kennel licensing. Kennel licensing occurs under a different section of the statute. Kennel licensing is something that is separate and apart from the deeming of a dog dangerous or nuisance. You could have dogs that are neither dangerous dogs nor nuisance dogs, but that are in a facility that isn't properly licensed or doesn't qualify for the license, and that's a separate issue. So if the kennel license is not renewed and the owner of the property continues to utilize the property as a kennel without a license, there would need to be further action taken through the issuance of a cease and desist order, and then separate, different litigation under a different section of the statute to stop that ongoing violation, operating a kennel without a license.
You have a follow-up, Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah, I think you've answered that question. The concern that I think the underlying concern is that they are two separate issues, and that we keep them as two separate issues, so that if something were to happen with the kennel, that is wholly separate from what our decision to deem the dogs dangerous, and then ultimately the board's decision to euthanize them. I think my concern is that if we find ourselves in that position, that the issues may become convoluted.
And if I could add, through you, Mr. Chairman, I agree entirely. They are separate issues under separate sections of the statute. There is certainly some overlap in terms of the considerations of the board, of the animal control officer, when deciding, how a nuisance or a dangerous dog would need to be dealt with if on premises, as compared to how you'd operate a kennel. So just by way of example, I understand that there is an issue that has arisen with respect to the height of a fence on the premises and whether the height of the fence is sufficient to contain the dogs on the premises. Well, that would be a concern in determining whether the dangerous dog is sufficiently contained in the premises to satisfy the concerns that the board may have with regard to maintaining the safety of the public. Similarly, that could be a concern with respect to the keeping or the operation of a kennel, whether that fence provides the protection, the security that it's supposed to. So there may be similar considerations in both contexts, but I agree wholeheartedly that they need to be dealt with separately, because licensing is far different than the determination of one or two dogs being dangerous dogs.
My concern about this opinion, first of all, I was glad to hear that the district court upheld the town's decision. But now I'm understanding from this about the request of the impounding of the dogs, which I guess, given that this happened in 5 months, we didn't really deem, although maybe in retrospect, it would have been appropriate to deem that if we did think these dogs, if we did determine these dogs to be dangerous, probably should have asked to impound them from the beginning. But now I'm looking at, according to your colleague's opinion to us, that this appeal process could take, years. And here we have a determination that these dogs caused, injury, serious injury to people, and they're just allowed to stay where they are. I mean, I don't think this gets remedied on this call, but I just want to point out that they're staying in the same place that they were, that they have escaped in the past. And that could be to the tune of years. And therefore, I don't think there's doesn't seem to be the necessary urgency that declaring a dangerous dog, that which we didn't take lightly, that basically resulted in the determination that they should be euthanized, the dogs, that now these dogs are going to be at the same property in the same vicinity of the people who were affected by this. That seems to not be in the best interest of the public safety. And now I'm saying that if we ordered for the impounding of them, it may actually get denied because we didn't act in a timely fashion, because we didn't ask for it immediately. In retrospect, I guess we should have.
Can I respond to that, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
So unfortunately, urgency is not always the court's forte. With that said, you're absolutely correct that this is or could be a lengthy process. I think that Attorney Kennebec was suggesting a few things. One was that, it may not be worthwhile from a monetary perspective, from an expenditure of resources perspective, to seek to impound the dogs until we know whether an appeal is filed. And we, of course, expected that to be a relatively quick turnaround. 10 days is a short appeal period by most standards. We didn't expect that there would then be a pandemic and a lengthy extension of the statute of limitations. So now we're waiting until April 21st. So that's the first question for the board, whether you would want to take action in light of that. I will tell you that even if you said, well, we don't want to wait another 4 weeks until April 21st arrives, it may even be challenging, physically, practically, to get into court because the court is only hearing emergency matters, at least we know, through April 6th. So that would be, a potential challenge. So we could argue that this rises to the level of an emergency based upon the dangerous dog determination. I don't know what the court would say. I will tell you that according to Attorney Kennebec, he's spoken to the lieutenant has spoken to the clerk magistrate, and the clerk magistrate indicates that this would not qualify as an emergency and the court wouldn't accept it as an emergency filing between now and at least April 6th, possibly April 21st. I'm not 100% convinced that the decision by the board or the failure by the board to take immediate action to seek impoundment of the dogs would necessarily prevent the board from successfully pursuing some sort of an impoundment order. I also want to note that if you look on page 2 of Attorney Kennefec's memo in section 3, where he discusses the ability to impound, he quotes the statute. It's a block quote about halfway down the page. And what's important about it is impoundment is one option. Impoundment is an extreme option in the eyes of the court. I'm not saying it's not warranted. I'm not expressing any opinion or position on that. I'm just saying that from the position of the court, it's an extreme option, much like euthanization of a dog is an extreme option. But there are other options within the statute that are available to the court. So another potential approach, and it's a question I asked of Attorney Kennebec when I spoke with him earlier today in anticipation that some of these questions might arise tonight. Another option would be that we seek from the court not necessarily an order of impoundment, and whether that's because we didn't act immediately or not, we may not need to seek that, but there is the ability here to seek orders with regard to additional restraint with respect to confinement of the dog as considered necessary for the safety of other animals and the public. So there are additional options available under the statute, lesser remedies than a true impoundment of the dog, which also carries with it additional costs for the municipality. In the event that you're not successful through those various levels of appeal, you're then on the hook for the cost of impounding the dog. We may be able to seek additional restraint, additional confinement, additional protection that could benefit the town, benefit the public, and we could seek that through a court order. Again, not sure it can be accomplished between now and mid-April, but we could seek that in late April, early May, whenever the courts are back to routine business, and certainly well in advance of 1 to 2.5 years from now, when the litigation could be complete if the owner opts to avail themselves of every potential route of appeal.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, so just two clarifying points. So the COVID-19 emergency situation we find ourselves in notwithstanding, I wasn't in at all trying to indicate that we should act within that frame and say this is an emergency. I did not mean to convey that, nor did I think that. It was more of the fact that the opinion states that usually in the last paragraph of that same section, he says that usually they're sought immediately. And he indicates that the court could deny the petition because we've waited this long. However, given the fact of what you're saying, that we also have other options like confinement, again, I think we should, as soon as practicable, when the current emergency situation lifts, we should probably take to that and try to pursue that confinement, at least in the act of protecting the public. So that would be my feeling. But we can come to that after they have filed the appeal and the courts are acting in a more standard schedule. Seeing no hands raised, let's go to number 8, the request to temporarily close Sean Patrick's Restaurant. I will hand it over to you, Madam Town Manager. Please unmute yourself.
Gotta get used to that function. So in the Google Drive is a letter from the attorney of Mr. Flanagan requesting permission to close, which is part of the board's liquor license regulations. And so he quotes a section of the board's regulations. So there needs to be a vote of the board.
Did everybody get a chance to read that document?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I read it through. Does anybody have any objections to not granting this temporary closure request? Then I would entertain a motion acting as the licensing authority on behalf of the request. Mr. McQuaid.
I'd make a motion to grant the permission to close the premise as requested.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Mr. McQuaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and Mrs. Adams. Hold on, you're still on mute. Let me unmute it. There you go. Whoop.
Thank you.
Thank you. And aye for me, so that's unanimous. Number 9, bond anticipation notes for the Saliba property and the ladder truck. Again, Madam Town Manager.
So this is, the board was asked to come in yesterday to sign the bond anticipation notes for the Saliba property loan, as well as the ladder truck borrowing. And just an announcement to the public that the board signed.
So that has been executed, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Any questions about that? I see no hands raised. Excellent. Number 10, discussion on the town manager performance evaluation process and timeline. So one of our goals earlier in the year was to set the new procedure and then the new evaluation form. And I believe that contractually it has to be done, and please, Madam Town Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to be done by your contract before a town election. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a time frame that we can do this in, but I'd like to not delay it if we can avoid delaying it. Not if we can avoid delaying it, I'd like to, and get that process started so that we give more time. Now, all of this is, I'm going to turn this question to you, Madam Town Manager, because a lot of this is predicated on your own self-evaluation, which determines when the members of the board can meet with you and discuss their evaluation compared to your own self-evaluation. So I would ask, if not, if you don't know it already, if by next week we can have a timeline about when you feel comfortable saying that you'll have your self-evaluation done, and we can work that timeline from there.
I can have a proposal for next meeting of when
Okay.
I would have that done.
That'd be perfect. If we can set out, you can work with me, or you can set out the proposed schedule just like you did with the town meeting. That'd be fine. You and I can work out that and present it to the board prior to the meeting, and then we can have it reviewed and hopefully voted on by the board next week would be great.
Okay.
Is that, I don't want to put too much on your plate because I know your days are COVID-19 all day, all night. So
Yeah. So we'll work out a timeline.
okay,
So-
thank you. In the Dropbox was the evaluation procedure. I would request that all the members reread it so we know how everything's going to go. And then also in there was the actual evaluation form and the changes we made to how that will be evaluated, how the town manager will be evaluated. Number 11, the executive session minutes for release. We have 6, September 15th, 2015. August 30th, 2017, June 18th, 2018, session 1, September 18th, 2018, January 3rd, 2019, and January 15th, 2019. I believe these were all related to one case, is that correct?
Yes, it's the O'Brien case.
Okay, so do we need, so this board, this current board can vote to release these, correct?
Yes.
And can we do them in bulk or do we need to do them individually?
I think as you read them, unless there was an objection for anyone not wishing to.
So let's ask that question. Does anybody, Mr. McQuaid?
Oh, I have no objection. I was going to make the motion.
Okay, so does anybody before that have any objection to doing these all in bulk? Does anybody have any one particular one that they want to discuss, or is everybody okay with approving the executive session minutes release for all these 6 dates? I see nobody raising their hand, so now Mr. McQuaid, go ahead.
Make the motion to release the executive session minutes as read by the chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Okay, all those in favor, Mr. McQuaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
Mrs. Adams.
Aye.
And an aye for me, so that is unanimous. Any minutes, warrants, or action items? Is there a warrant that's going to need to be signed
Next week.
next week? Okay. Any, no minutes, except for executive minutes we just did. Any action file issues? Any committee reports? No, so let's go to old business. Even though this has been delayed, we'll leave it on here. Any discussion on the fiscal year 2021 budget, which of course is gonna, per the town manager, is gonna have to be reworked. FY 21 capital plan, 5-year financial forecast, and annual town meeting warrants. Anything on any of that? No.
If I can, just, I can cover it under, just say verbal town manager report when we get to that portion of the agenda.
Okay.
And I don't know.
So we'll get to that in 30 seconds.
Okay.
I think maybe a minute. So we have a ratification under interviews, appointments, and reappointments and resignations. We have the ratification of the town manager appointment of Kathleen Como as the animal control officer, animal inspector. The term runs May 1st, 2020 to April 1st, 2021. Any other word, Madam Town Manager?
No, I just asked for the board's ratification of this appointment.
Anybody, Mr. McQuaid?
No, I was going to make the motion that we ratify the town manager's appointment of Kathleen Como to Inspector term runs through May 1st, 2020 through April 1st, 2021.
Second.
Second.
Excellent. Roll call vote, Mr. McQuaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and Mrs. Adams.
Aye.
And aye from me. Excellent. Town manager report,
I would
you're
like to
on.
thank Kathy Coleman.
I'll do that on your behalf.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Phyllis said, I think she said she'd like to.
I just wanted to thank Kathy Como for continuing to serve the town.
Thank you.
She's a trooper.
I agree. So now town manager report.
Yes, so as I indicated earlier, we will be starting from scratch essentially for the fiscal 21 budget. And I've asked the finance director, and she's working with the treasurer collector on revenue projections for the remainder of this year, as well as we'll be starting to look at revenue projections for next year. I was on a conference call that was set up through MMA today, which the Lieutenant Governor was on, as well as Sean Croonan from DLS. And they did confirm that we would receive our local aid payments for the remainder of the year. So that was positive news on that front for fiscal 20. We've yet to discuss with the state about the chapter and local aid for next year, fiscal 21. So that will be coming. Also related to fiscal 21. So now that we have the town meeting date, I will reach out to the finance committee and with the proposed schedule for the budget hearings so they can begin their process again and start discussions there. As in regards to fiscal 20, we are looking at the remainder of the year, as I stated. And last night I issued, tell the departments that there is effective immediately would be a spending freeze and hiring freeze for the remainder of fiscal 20 for all non-essential, so it's only for essential items, and hiring related for any public safety related purposes, excluding grant funds that we would be in for projects for other things in fiscal 20. I also emailed the TCP Building Design Committee because right before about 2 weeks ago on March 12th, I believe it was, the TCP Design Committee met with the firm that was chosen to for that project. And we reviewed, the scope of work and the timeline, and they got back to me with a signed contract. And as you know, on that Thursday, everything changed. The landscape changed. So last week, I spoke with them and said at the moment, the entire focus and our priority is dealing with responses related to COVID-19, and everything else is being put on hold, and that we would get back to them how we're going to proceed on that project. My recommendation is that we, because of uncertainty in the fiscal arena, that we hold off and either do a very limited scope with the firm or delay that project further. So that's an update on that. We have a PEC meeting, which is a public committee meeting tomorrow, a phone conference. This has to do with our dental rates for employees, which we put out to bid. So we got a competitive bid back from Blue Cross Blue Shield that because we currently have Altus Dental for our employees. And so we'll have that meeting tomorrow with the Public Employee Committee. And the fuel tank project, I did get confirmation from that agency that we would get the full amount of the earmark, the 165,000, once I received back a signed copy of the standard contract, and we can proceed from there. So we should, in the next couple weeks, and this was all during, I contacted her amidst all of this response to COVID-19, and she confirmed that those funds would be released in full.
Excellent.
So that is all I have right now.
Okay. Just so people know, we are planning on having another one of these meetings next week. So 3:31 next Tuesday, we will have one same venue as this. At that point, please give us your feedback if you're on this or you're watching at home. And again, ways we can improve it. Just a couple notes, and then I will try to open it up some public comment from people who are joined here. For people who are joining, find out where your raised hand is, and I will call you in the order that I see them come up. But one thing I want to say is, first of all, I want to thank the town manager, town council, and all the people that work for the town, and all the department heads and the employees who have done, I think, an outstanding job. The school departments, DPW, public safety, etc., town hall people, everybody really, who've come together in a time of crisis across the town, across the state, across the country, and the world. Together we'll get through this, and look out in these times when we're all shut into our homes or limiting our social interactions. Please watch out for your neighbors, especially if they are confined under normal circumstances, confined or living alone. Please check in with them, give them a phone call, knock on the window. Don't scare them when you knock on the window, but knock on the window, make sure everything's okay. Interact with each other, share information like so many people are doing on social media. The one thing I would say, as I said in our last televised broadcast from when all this emergency started last Monday, which is be careful what you share. Share information that you know to be true. Let's not get misinformation out there. If there's anything worse than no information, it's misinformation. So be careful what you share. But be eager to share things you do know, and be eager to share, comforting words to people, and reach out to people who don't have a lot of people reaching out to them necessarily. Either they're older, or they don't have family nearby, or they live alone, etc. But together we will get through this. So everything will be changing day to day. I'm sure the cases in Massachusetts, like they are in the rest of the country, will continue to rise for a certain period until we see what the social distancing policy and the stay-at-home policy has affected. But that will probably not happen until another week's time or so, which will be the end of a 2-week period. So please be at least cognizant of that it's expected that the cases will rise. Donate where you can to food pantries and other health benefits. I know the Red Cross is asking for people to donate blood because people are not obviously in a position, they don't want to interact. I don't know how that works. You can contact the nearest Red Cross to work out how that happens, but I know they're running low on blood, and they've said so, as well as other materials, any of the PPE material. My hat goes off to all the doctors, nurses, and health professionals and first responders that are out there putting themselves in front of people every day who have this. So thank you to them and the hospitals, etc. So with that being said, Mrs. Adams, you raised your hand here.
You just said very nicely, but just that I'm thinking of everybody. I know people have lost jobs. I know I have, 4 kids that are typically in school. It's very hard to see this through their eyes because they don't understand what's happening with their lives. So I'm just hoping that this goes through very quickly. But in the meantime, thinking of everybody, and like you said, sharing, what feels like optimism and everything. And hopefully this all goes back to normal soon. And I think of the part of It's a Wonderful Life, where the main character, the knob of his staircase always comes off and he's frustrated by it. And then when he resumes his normal life and the knob of his staircase comes off, he rejoices. So I think we'll appreciate parts of our life that we didn't appreciate before. So
Agreed.
Yep. Fuck you.
All right, I will, if anybody would like to raise their hand in here in the Zoom meeting, if they have a public comment, I'd like to. Anyone? Wow. I thought some people said they were going to. Again, if you're looking for it, there should be something on your Zoom app that says raise hand. Okay, let's go to Terry. As with public comment, Terry, please fully identify yourself. Terry?
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Okay.
There you go.
Terry Birchfield, 1 Rose Garden Lane, Lunenburg. And basically, I'm just speaking for the Finance Committee. I am going to say that we are going to try to organize a meeting for next Thursday night, so we can review all the information that Heather presented tonight, and hopefully we'll get a look at the schedule that you just went over. But we're looking forward to, like working the process through and trying to get everything done in time for the town meeting in June. But yeah, Heather, if you could send out that schedule, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Someone who's logged on is Mrs. Tom Brady, who wants to ask a question. Someone who's logged on is Mrs. Tom Brady, who wants to ask a question.
Oh, I should probably mute the TV.
Hello?
Hi, everybody. It's Michelle from the Boys and Girls Club. And now that Tom is retired, we're going to get married and he's going to support the Boys and Girls Club full time. So thank you guys for doing this. I think the meeting tonight was actually really well done. Technically, it looks fantastic. I can hear you all. I'm not here to ask for money, so that's exciting. I want to share 2 things that are going on that I've been involved in. One is our local United Way, the United Way of North Central Mass. They're located at John Fitch Highway in Fitchburg, and they support all kinds of things in the community. They have a fund going right now. It's called the Stand United Fund to support COVID-19. 100% of the funds they collect will go to our local community for things, immediate needs, food, assistance with rent, diapers, formula. And the fund had only been open for about 3 days and they had raised $60,000, and that was almost a week ago. I'm not sure where it's at now, but it is 100% staying locally. So if folks want to donate locally, I recommend the United Way of North Central Mass. You can text COVID help to 50155, or you can go on their website, which is uwncm.org. And they've already started giving out funds to help folks that are facing an unstable future because of this virus. The other thing I want to mention is that I always talk about how our club is really about helping the kids be social and have fun and build memories. And so last Monday, we started virtual BGCL. And like you guys were using the Zoom app. The first week, we weren't sure what we were doing and we were figuring it out. This week, we've added additional activities. The kids had a blanket fort challenge, a snowman building contest. We've watched a movie together. Tomorrow, we have a trick shot contest. We've taken virtual field trips. And I want to share this because I want to open it up to all the kids in our community and the families too. It's hard if you're working from home. We'll give you something to keep your kids busy. We're hearing from a lot of families that this has been really beneficial for them. And we encourage the families to get involved too. We post the links of what we're doing on the club Facebook page, the club Instagram page, and we use an app called Remind that you can download the Remind app. It's free. And then we can send you a text saying, go on Zoom at 10 a.m. for the check-in, go on Zoom at 12 p.m. to play Pictionary. And like you guys can see, kids can join in. There can be unlimited numbers of people. Families can get involved. Families can check out what we have going on. So I'm encouraging everybody to check out virtual BGCL and try to make the most of this and stay connected while we're all home. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other buddy from the public? There was, if you see the chat area, it was posted how to raise your hand. So if you go to the participants at the bottom of your screen and click on that, a box pops up from the right, and you can choose raise your hand. So if anybody wants to do that, I'm assuming, Michelle, you want to say something else again?
No, I just was excited that I found out how to do that.
Oh, okay,
Thank you.
good. So, post fact, Mrs. Adams.
I was just wondering, because it doesn't show on my phone the way I have it set up, how many people joined us, like from how you can see it, just out of curiosity.
High of 25, and right now 19 stayed with us. That's including the 7 of us who were part of the meeting. So 12 to 18 people, so not bad. And then, of course, it was broadcast on TV, so a lot of people may have just been watching there.
True.
All right, I see no other hands raised. I want to thank the members of the board. I want to thank the town manager and the town council for running and everybody staying in a very orderly meeting. This probably was more orderly than most of our live meetings, so maybe we need to take some of that over there when we return. I want to, on behalf of the board, Heather, please extend, and I don't know if Steve is still on here, he was before, but thanks Steve Malandrinos, our IT director, for working out how this all worked together. And hopefully the other boards who are going to be having Zoom conferences and Zoom meetings like the Finance Committee can make the best of it as well. And I'm sure they'll be getting better as we go along. So thank you all for your patience, all for your input, all for your hard work. And I wish everybody good night, stay safe, and take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thanks and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So, yes, thank you.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. McQuaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
and I for myself. Now, good night. Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
Aye.
Thank you.